Hello, everyone. In the second part of our journey, we will dive into the depths of our mind and psyche. The physical and mental parts of our body are closely interconnected. Every time you lift dumbbells or perform squats, you trigger a vast number of neurochemical reactions that energize the brain, improve memory, attention, and learning ability, help prevent neurodegeneration, and enhance emotional well-being. We truly can influence how our brain functions. And once again, ordinary resistance training is among the leaders here. Several large meta-analyses covering more than 50 studies confirm that physical activity, including strength training, can improve cognitive abilities both in healthy individuals and in people with cognitive impairment. Exercise increases the volume of the hippocampus by about 2%. This is the part of the brain responsible for memory and learning. Most interestingly, this helps compensate for the age-related shrinkage that would normally occur over 1 or even 2 years. The increase in hippocampal volume is also associated with higher levels of the so-called BDNF protein in the blood of those who train. Today, BDNF is being discussed especially actively in the context of resistance training because it is potentially linked to neuroprotection, neurogenesis, and neuroplasticity. The brain's efficiency depends on how well this entire system functions. Neurogenesis is the formation of new neurons that can integrate into existing networks or create new ones. Neuroplasticity is the formation of new neural connections and the strengthening of existing ones in response to new experiences. Neuroprotection refers to mechanisms that protect neurons and slow down harmful processes. Cognitive functions encompass all of these: memory, attention, perception, language, problem-solving, and other aspects of thinking that we use in daily life. None of this is possible without neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, neuroprotection, and the coordinated work of the brain as a whole. Physical inactivity, on the contrary, negatively affects these processes. So, how much should we train for the brain? Opinions vary, but most likely it is roughly in line with the same basic recommendations we mentioned earlier. For example, a meta-analysis of 44 studies examining adults over 50 showed clinically significant effects even at moderate levels of physical activity, with resistance training producing the best results. Another randomized study compared 3 groups of women. 2 groups performed strength training, while the third practiced balance exercises. After a year of strength training twice per week, researchers observed improvements in memory, executive brain functions, and reduced white matter atrophy. Moreover, these effects persisted for 2 years, but only in the strength training groups. Let's move on. If none of your relatives has suffered from Parkinson's disease or dementia, most notably Alzheimer's, you are very fortunate because it is truly frightening to witness. I have seen such people. They gradually stop recognizing their loved ones. Every 10 minutes, they must be reminded of everything. They may forget the way to the next room or confuse everyday actions. Slowly but inevitably, they lose even their sense of self. You may also have heard about cases where people develop frontotemporal dementia and gradually lose the ability to understand language, and this can happen relatively early in life. This is something worth reflecting on. Who, if not us, still has the chance to prevent dementia and not let it steal years of quality life? What would you give for 10 more healthy years? Is 2 hours a week in the gym really too much? Physical activity not only reduces the likelihood of developing such diseases, but also improves cognitive function in patients who already have dementia. This is reflected in several recent meta-analyses. What role does resistance training play here? Recall the earlier discussion about sarcopenia. Loss of muscle mass and strength with age accelerates cognitive decline. Muscles, as we have learned, are a true factory producing beneficial molecules for the brain. That is why preserving them into old age is so important. One study showed that resistance training significantly improved memory and thinking in people with mild cognitive impairment. and the effect lasted for almost a year and a half. When I was preparing material for these videos and reviewing stacks of research, I was honestly amazed by how deeply our physical condition is connected to the brain. In many countries, mental health is still stigmatized. The most common disorders, anxiety and depression, are often treated at best with advice like, "It will pass," or "Pull yourself together." But we must accept a new reality. We are living in one of the most psychologically burdened generations. Where people once kept such struggles inside, today we are beginning to speak openly about them. A large proportion of adults experience anxiety or depression, and in older age, many people will face some form of mental disorder despite the abundance of modern comforts. If changing the conditions of civilization is nearly impossible, training has worked, works, and will continue to work. It literally strengthens our psyche, making our natural stress resistance barriers thicker. 3 major meta-analyses covering more than 1,000 studies conclude that physical activity should be a primary approach in combating anxiety and depression. Resistance training is one of the most convenient and effective forms of exercise, and its effects are comparable to those of antidepressants. People who trained regularly had about 40% fewer days affected by mental health problems compared to inactive individuals. Even if you do not currently have depression, training can help prevent it in the future. Some studies even show that in certain cases, exercise can be more effective than medication or psychotherapy for mild to moderate conditions. Of course, this does not apply to severe clinical depression, but after medical stabilization, physical activity is strongly recommended to maintain mental health. Interestingly, one meta-analysis found that physical activity had a more positive effect on mental health than education level or even income. Now let's talk about sleep. A study of 270,000 people showed that those who slept fewer than 6 hours per night had 2.5 times higher risk of mental disorders. A systematic review covering 50 years of data found that any form of sleep deprivation leads to anxiety and apathy. Lack of sleep not only harms the psyche, but also makes us an ideal target for diseases such as atherosclerosis and diabetes. 7 to 9 hours of sleep is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity. If there is anything worth sacrificing in life, it should definitely not be sleep. And the idea of catching up on weekends is another myth. It simply does not work. Training gives us 2 powerful benefits for sleep: an increase in deep sleep, when the most important regeneration processes occur, tissue repair, hormone release, and memory consolidation. Longer total sleep time and faster sleep onset, meaning we fall asleep quicker, sleep deeper, and rest longer. A recent meta-analysis including 24 studies found that for young and middle-aged adults, resistance training is the most effective non-pharmacological way to improve sleep quality, even outperforming cardio. Everyone struggles with time, and people often sacrifice sleep first. At one point, I was inspired by the extreme routines of famous high performers, waking up at 5 a.m., rushing straight to the gym, pushing exhausting workouts, trying to stay productive all day, and going to bed late because modern life constantly pushes us to stay awake longer. After a couple of years of this lifestyle, people burn out and fall apart. If you wake up early, then go to bed earlier too, so that your total sleep time does not suffer. We have now examined key aspects of physical health, from the cardiovascular system, bones, hormones, and immunity to many diseases, as well as mental health, including cognition, neurodegeneration, and sleep. And we can see that moderate physical activity is a kind of free golden pill. Within the N.O.X.U.S concept, this idea is central. At the same time, my goal is not to sell you a miracle program. The best approach is to combine different types of activity that you genuinely enjoy. If you do want a structure, I would suggest directing about 80% of your focus toward resistance training and 20% toward other activities. For example, my own routine currently includes 2 strength sessions per week, 3 yoga sessions that I truly enjoy, and occasional low heart rate runs of 5 to 10 kilometers. I hope this information was truly useful and inspiring for you. Train mindfully, and see you next time.